Hello everyone, and welcome to another installment of Erinn's Book Club. I finally have another book review to do. This one actually took me a while because it's an interesting one. So the book that I read is The Wildfire Season by Andrew Pyper. I've never read anything by Andrew Pyper, but all the reviews were good. The back of it, or I guess the synopsis of it, I'm going to read to you, and then I've actually made notes because it was an interesting enough book that I had to kind of write down my thoughts as I was reading them. So here's the back. Haunted, scarred, and alone, and the nightmare's just beginning. Of all the end-of-the-world places he could have run to after he was burned, Miles McCanwen, chose Ross River. Buried deep in the vast wilderness of the Yukon, it seemed the perfect place to escape the past. Best of all, he could carry on doing what he did best, fighting fire. But 5 years on, Miles is still troubled by the two phantoms of his previous life. The young man whose agonizing death preys on his conscience, and the woman who he abandoned as a consequence. In the dark forest around Ross River, fire and violence are brewing. As a small blaze becomes an infernal, group of bear trackers is about to encounter nature in its wildest form. Elsewhere, a killer is going about his work quietly and ruthlessly. As the survivors of the hunting party are picked off one by one, the fire rages through the mountains. Miles embarks on a desperate rescue mission driven by love for a daughter who, until this dangerous summer, had been a perfect stranger. A remarkable work, The Wildfire Season is an edgy physiological thriller, a supernatural chiller, and a terrifying tale of untamed nature and an unusual and unusually moving story of what one can choose to endure in the name of love. So, before I go any further, I'm going to say that this is going to be a spoiler review. There will be spoils in this review. So if you haven't read this book, please stop right now, read the book, and come back. That being said, I have mixed feelings about this book. It's a very good story, but I feel that it was poorly written in a way of the flow of the story was very difficult to follow. The writer seemed to be very distracted. There wasn't a very good flow of the story. It seemed like it was a very harsh and disjointed story. It would start the story like in the beginning of the fire starter. We would follow him in his thought process, and then it would go to like the bear in the woods, and then back to the main character. But there was such an abrupt change in each chapter, and even it wasn't even the chapter that the change was coming through. Even page breaks would cause the change. So that was really frustrating because I couldn't actually get into the story because the story kept changing. And the whole concept of the bear in this story just seemed like an add-on. We could probably take that entire storyline out and still have the compelling story that we do, and it would be less disjointed and easier to follow and more enjoyable, in my opinion. I'm just checking to make sure I've got enough time. I do. I still have 9 minutes. The next point I have here is the main character. I said here the very flawed and damaged main character. Hard to see any redeeming qualities of him. Therefore, it was hard to relate to him. Very, very damaged. Like the traumatic injury that he went through. Yes, it's a compelling injury, and I don't know how I would be able to be affected if I got burned to that point, but he took the character that was very promising and something relatable and turned him really quickly into a monster. So that was kind of hard to flip-flop and follow that. The world building, though, and the character, like the supporting characters, I found were very real and very relatable to them. I love the supporting characters. The world building was just enough detailed without being boring, so that was enjoyable. However, none of the main characters are quote-unquote normal. All of them are damaged either mentally or physically. Even the innocent child that he has chosen to write about is broken and sad, has sadness beyond what her years should have been. Like, I get that she had a real struggle to start with the mother being abandoned and that kind of thing, but there was this knowledge and understanding that this child had that I didn't find very realistic, and it was really hard to have a suspension of belief in that situation. The identity of the Firestarter in the end, though, that took me by surprise. Apparently it didn't take the main character by surprise. He totally got it in the end, which I think was a tacked-on thing. It was, it would have been better if he said, okay, this is the Firestarter and surprise, and it took the main character by surprise, but apparently this mentally, physically damaged monster of a human being was able to read the nuances of his friend and find out that he was the Firestarter. You know what I mean? Like, that, again, was not very believable. And also, at the end, the main character switching from, I don't really care about this woman and my child, I'm too damaged to be in their life, I'm not worthy of them, to, I've got to do all I can to make them survive, I've got to give up myself and my being and sacrifice who I am for them to survive. That kind of switch like that, hard to believe. Like, if you're going to have a main character that broken and that, like, evil, I don't think he would do the switch that quickly. But in the end, when they all got burnt, it's almost as if the fire scars and stuff kind of shows to the surface all of their brokenness. So, all in all, the story I enjoyed, the concept I enjoyed. Reading it was difficult. The flow was difficult, especially after coming off a book that was, the one that I read before was written so well. So it was hard to come to this book and struggle through the technicalities of it to a point where it took away from the enjoyment of the story. However, in the end, I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the nuances of the book. The author had a very good way of getting into the main character's head and portraying him to you. It's just, I don't think I would get any more of his books because I don't actually think I like the way he writes. And that just may be me. That just might be my personality, but that's the kind of the way I feel on it. But anyway, if any of you guys are looking into kind of a different read with kind of a different outlook on life, The Wildfire Season by Andrew Pyper, it's worth getting out and purchasing, and maybe you guys will read it and love it. But let me know if you do. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I will let you know when I have another book read. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.